You people have a print starting with 157.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hashem. Shkoch Yehuda.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, my boy. So, hi, Benji. So, the learning this evening, is everybody hearing me clearly? Because when I have these, then my voice tends to drop, but it's okay. Good. The learning this evening is in the Sefer Dvar Malchus from the Rebbe, but it's a special sikha, what the Rebbe said, not on Shabbos Pasha by Yigash, but on the Wednesday night, which was the same kriyas then as what we have now. And it was Hey Teves on the oil, Hey Teves. On that Wednesday night, the Rebbe said a whole sikha, and this evening we are going to be basic, at least in part of the sikha, Benegel is there, and then hopefully we'll add a little bit of a Farbrengen. And the learning and the Farbrengen are taking place in the Beis Knesses. Tzemach Tzedek Be'ir Atika Be'ir Kodesh Tsfat Tchenan Usabeinen Sechenan B'mheira V'yomeinu Omen.
Amen.
And this evening is Moitzoi Hey Teves Levov Teves Toshin Pei. So we'll read the Rebbe's sikha inside, and in order to give a bit of time and space to the Farbrengen, which we hope to make, Shalom, sit in close. We're only going to learn the main points of the sikha. However, the Rebbe begins by saying that Yom Zeh Hey Teves Koshur im Ashichro v'Hapidyon Shvuim Shel Sifrei v'Chisvei Rabbiseinu Nesienu v'Sifrias Agudas Chsidei Chabad Lubavitch שבנשיאוסוי ובהנהלוסוי של כהן קדושas Moiri v'chame admor nasi doreno. Well, that's referring to the Rebbe Rayat. Evamela, we notice right from the very beginning that the Rebbe calls Hey Teves a inyan of Pidyon Shvuim. Now, the concept of Pidyon Shvuim is a very powerful, albeit very high concept in the words of our sages in certain places in Shas. But Pidyon Shvuim, Pashtas, means that you redeem captured people who are Shvuyim, who've been taken by the Goyim in captivity, and either they are demanding big sums of money in order to give them back, or the Yidden lechatchila offer big sums of money in order to get them out. In other words, they're holding them on a permanent basis, but Yidden offer money in order to get them out. And that expresses itself in different ways in the Gemara. That's called Pidyon Shvuim. So the Rebbe says, he calls the situation of the Sfarim and the releasage of the Sfarim through the Psak Din of the federal court. The Rebbe calls that Pidyon Shvuim. In other words, that he regards that the way the Sforim were, they were in captivity. They were in the hands of what we might call koishech, or the koiches of darkness, the opposite of what Sforim represent, which is light. And Nea mitzvah v'Torah oyer, the union of the illumination of Torah. And that state that they were in was a state of captivity, shvuim. So he said the mitzvah that occurred through the effort made by the Rebbe and all the Chassidim against the case that the other side presented, which normally would have been very acceptable in America, because they claimed they were inheritors. They said that it's a law of Yerusha, and therefore they have the right to, or he has the right to the Sforim, because he's an Einiko, and he automatically is Yerush everything that his grandfather had. And so the taina of the Rebbe against that was that the whole Indian of, and that's why the Rebbe writes here, that this Sifriya was a Gudas Chsidei Chabad Lubavitch. This was the whole Chassidus of Chabad, the whole organization, which has come down from the Alter Rebbe, the Indian of the whole Chassidus Chabad, under the leadership in every generation of the Rebbe at that particular stage in the development of time. So in the time of the Rebbe and the Chassidim, at that time, the leader of the whole Agudas Chassidei Chabad was the Frierdiker Rebbe. And it's well known that the Rebbe regarded his leadership as Kayam, even after his passing, even after he was no longer present, Gafne so long, the Rebbe still regarded him as the, in matters of the Nasias and the actual leadership at that point of the Chassidus, the Rebbe regarded him as everlasting, Amenahel Nitzchi, you follow? So therefore, the Rebbe said that these Sforim didn't belong to anybody. They belonged to a great spiritual group called Chassidei Chabad, represented by Agudas Chassidei Chabad, the Menahel of whom was the Frierdiker Rebbe. And that was the whole picture that was given to the judge in the federal court. And at the beginning, in the main case, it was one judge, and he listened patiently for weeks and months to all the case that was put forward by the Chassidim under the guidance of the Rebbe, and he just patiently absorbed Pam Achari Pam this tremendous picture and symbolism of the great spiritual leader and the body of the Chassidim, and that everything owned by the great spiritual leader wasn't really his, it was really that of the Chassidim. And you should realize, excuse me for being going into length, because this Shiur is more like a Farbrengen. Tonight it's a Shiur, but it's also a Farbrengen. You should realize that during the case, they also made all the big Chassidim that the Rebbe gave the okay that they should go and give witness and everything. They stressed that the life of the Rebbe is not a life of a normal private person, but the life of a Rebbe is also his whole life. He's only the Chassidim. He doesn't really have, in inverted commas, a normal private life. He has maybe a few daladamas where he lives there, in inverted commas, and he maybe sleeps there a few hours in and there, But apart from that, his life is a public entity. He doesn't live for himself. And therefore, everything he owns is also in that way. It's not really his private ownership. And therefore, it's not shy to inherit that, because it's a spiritual union which is beyond time and place and has nothing to do with inheritance. You follow? So that was the unbelievable doctrine that all the great witnesses that came into the court at great length, it took months, for all this to be given over. That's what the judge of the court was exposed to. He was exposed to something which normally, in the eyes of non-Jews, particularly those living in the United States, they wouldn't have the faintest idea what you're talking about, because they know only that we have somebody that he was a grandfather to a offspring, and this offspring, he's the inheritor, so he can do what he likes with the inheritance. And that's exactly what he tined, and therefore he took all the spoiling without reshus, without any. He came clandestinely at the beginning, and he took all the, when I say all the spoiling, he took large numbers of them, absolutely without any reshus or any knowledge. And it was only that the Rebbe and the Chassidim found out about it, because on one particular occasion when he came to take Tzfatim, somebody noticed him, nosing around in the library. And they felt it was, proper to inform the Rebbe that somebody was nosing around in the library. And so that's how the Rebbe came to know. It could have gone on for further a long time, where the Sfarim would have been gradually missing in big numbers, and nobody would have known at the beginning. Probably after a lot of inquiry, it might have become possible to know what was going on. And so that's the amazing sort of case that was presented. So the Rebbe said that the passage of these Sfarim into the hands of somebody who wanted to make business with them, he wanted to make big money, because some of these Sfarim were worth, very, very significant sums of money. He wanted to sell them on the market of this type of antique, or whatever you might call it, a very special level of Sfarim. So the Rebbe likens that to the mitzvah in the Gemara of Pidyon Shvuim. It's like as if you have a captive and you've got to take him out of captivity. And in the previous sichas where the Rebbe spoke about Teves, he didn't use that example. But here in this particular sicha, the Rebbe makes this whole comparison to the concept of Pidyon Shvuim. So now the Rebbe says in the next chapter, he says, Vayomim ha'ela nishkorim v'naitzim.
Amen.
L'chaim. Anything you drink on the Teves is a l'chaim. So the Rebbe says, Hayomim ha'ela nishkorim v'naitzim. Now this is a very special point. That posik, Hayomim ha'ela nishkorim v'naitzim, that is a posik near the end of the Megillah Esther, what tells us the whole story of the great release and the great Pidyon, which took place on Purim. And defeat the destruction of Haman, and then later of all the Amalekites. And then it's written right near the end that these days are remembered and made, literally. So the Arizal, certain Sfarim bring down, but this is actually in the name of the Arizal, this Pshat. And that's of significance for us as being as we are Toshavim of Yer Kodesh Tzfat, plus other inyanim in connection with the Arizal. However, he said that the way to interpret that pasuk is that Hayomim Ha'ile, meaning the particular thing that you are celebrating, Nishkorim, if they are remembered properly, V'nasim, then they occur, meaning whatever that means. Well, it's not working. I'm trying to turn it on. Oh, there we are. Good. So, the Arizal says that if these days are remembered properly, Nizkorim, V'nasim, they reoccur just like they were the first time. Nasim means they are made. They are made means like it's reoccurring all over again. And so the two words, Nizkorim V'nasim, are like two different factors. One is Nizkorim, I only remember something that's in the past. But if I remember it rightly, then what I do is I cause it to reoccur. It, as it were, moves out of the past and it comes into the present. Well, that's the touch of the Arizal. So therefore, the Rebbe said, "Kasher magia yom zeh midei shona b'shona." When Hey Teves reaches us each year, azay nizkorim, we remember it as like something in the past. But nasim, it's remade, or inyonim shenifalu b'pam harishoin, or it's made all the things that happened the first time round. Yeah? In other words, the actual day that occurred relives itself in the present. So we see from that the Rebbe considers Hey Teves as a fully, stated Yontov. Because this is said in reference to the Megillah, in reference to Purim. And Purim is a full Yontov by Yidden. So it's apparent that the Rebbe is hinting through that and showing us that Hey Teves is none the less than that. It has that power that if we will remember properly, then we make it again in the present. So that's one thing. So then the Rebbe says, "V'al pi divrei HaMishnah, mitzvah goyreres mitzvah." Well, that's the lashon of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Well, it's written, Ben Azai says this, by the way. And he says that you should be ratz mitzvah kala kavachamura. You should run after a light mitzvah. That means to say a easy mitzvah, just like a very strict mitzvah. And then he gives a reason. Why is that? He said, mitzvah goyreres mitzvah. Because one mitzvah literally drags another mitzvah after. The word goyreres means it's literally drawn after physically. In other words, if you do one mitzvah, then that will bring along with it, and in result, and in hemshech lezeh, it will bring another mitzvah. And that's what the Rebbe adds now. Shekiyum mitzvah maybe es ha'odam hamakayim of mitzvah, likayim od mitzvah. That brings him, and Ben Azai uses the lashon over there. He said, Sheshcha mitzvah mitzvah. In other words, it's almost like a sachar, it's almost like a reward. But with that he adds another dimension, which is not really the point here. The main point here is that if you do one mitzvah b'pashtus and with a fullness, then you will have another mitzvah. It will bring another mitzvah after it. Uberfrat ubeika. Yeah, l'kaim mitzvahu atzma. So he said the kavanah of that statement doesn't just mean any mitzvah, but it means in particular and especially or that mitzvah which you did. Yeah, you did a certain mitzvah, then you will have the schus to do that mitzvah again. In other words, mitzvah, goreres mitzvah, means be'ika to that particular mitzvah that you're doing. So therefore, says the Rebbe, Zeh Klau, Yebenekia L'Kol mitzvah. So the Rebbe said that's in reference to any mitzvah that you do. If you do it, Hashem will help you, that will bring and literally drag after it the same mitzvah again. Yeah. So the Rebbe said, if that's the case in any mitzvah, then he says, Alachas kama v'kama b'negel mitzvah rabba to pidyon shuim. How much more so? And that's a question of kal v'chomer. How much more so, a fortiori, that will be the case in reference to pidyon shuim, which is a mitzvah rabba. Now, this expression mitzvah rabba is a lashon in the Gemara. It's brought down in the Gemara in Masechta Bava Basra, not far from the beginning of the Masechta, that the mother of Shubur Malka, she was one of the late kings after the Hashmonaim, before the destruction of the Second Temple, and she was descended from Avadim. She wasn't really a miyucheses, a yidna in the full sense, and her mother was a non-Jewish. So her mother, once they were very influential people, she had all of a sudden a big sum of money, and she brought it to Rabbi Yosef. He was one of the Amoraim. She brought him this big sum of money and gave it to him. And she said, I want you to use that for a mitzvah rabba, for a big mitzvah. So it's written in the Gemara that Rabbi Yosef, he was sitting and declaring, working out in his mind, what is a mitzvah rabba? What does it mean, a mitzvah rabba? So he came to the conclusion that it's referring to pidyon shvuyim. He said that to save Yidden from the state of captivity, that is the greatest of all the mitzvah. That's called mitzvah rabba. So he decided that this money she had given him, he would use for that. And that's a whole very interesting issue in the Gemara, what I'm not going into now, but I'll just mention it very briefly, that normally if Goyim give money to Yidden in big tzedakah, then it's not in it to use it for exactly what they want, except if they give to build a shul. That's very interesting. If they give money to a base Knesset, you're allowed to take it. L'chatchila, not have any question. We learned that from when the Yidden came back from Babel, what's his name? The king then, Dariovich, what was his name? He sent money for the base of, he sent wood and other things for the base of Mikdash, and the Yidden used it because he said he wants even his name to be written on one of the planks, that it should be remembered that he gave it. And they used it. So from that we learn that to a base Knesset, which is like a hemshech at the base of Mikdash, you could take from them. But normally we don't take money from the Goyim exactly for what they say, but we try to give it back to Goyim, to their poor people and things like that indirectly. But you have to be careful because you're not allowed to be gonev das habriyos. You're not allowed to deceive somebody and do differently than what he commanded. That's called genevas das habriyos. And that is shaykh to goyim. You're not allowed to do that to goy either. You're allowed to be goyim of das, of a mirror, since they give it for a certain thing, then you have no breath. And so since she said she wants it to be used for a mitzvah rabbah, then Rabbi Yosef felt that he had to give it for a mitzvah rabbah, because she said directly that's what she wants. So it's also lignoiv das abriyos. So he tried to work out what is a mitzvah rabbah. You follow? What is a mitzvah rabbah? And the Gemara says it's a pidyon shvuyim. And you know why? It's very frightening over there. The Gemara says, because there are all sorts of things which are worse than other things. But the worst of all things is to be kept in captivity by the Goyim. That is the worst. suffering, and it's worse than death. So he brings the Gemara there. Therefore, to be paid something from Shiur is called mitzvah rabbah. How do you call it? It's called a great mitzvah. So the Rebbe said, if this cloud, the one mitzvah will bring another mitzvah, applies to any mitzvah, to a mitzvah rabbah, to the greatest of all mitzvahs, how much more so, that you'll be zeicher. So the Rebbe said, we don't have shvuyim walking around, so we're going to be zeicher to another mitzvah, piti and shvuyim. What are we going to be zeicher to? So are you guys batlonim, or do you realize what the Rebbe is referring to? That there's still Sfarim in Russia, you know about it, you know the whole Maisa. Yeah, they're still holding them to this day, even though they make out they're good friends with Israel, but they're not prepared to give those Sfarim. Yeah. Is a mirror, the Rebbe said that mitzvah, Goreros mitzvah, that since Hey Teves represents a pidyon of the shvuyim of all those Sfarim, which was a lot, then that will give koyach, and that will allow that the Sfarim which are still in another place, they will also be nifta. And that's what the Rebbe says. Harei movad shamitzvah va'inin the pidyon shvuyim shanifal b'yom ha'iteva shezehu mi'eino b'tukmas ha'inin the pidyon shvuyim b'pashta. So the Rebbe says that what's it got to do one with the other? Pidyon shvuyim, the Gemara means people. People are in captivity. So the Rebbe said that the Sfarim and Yidden are very comparable one to the other. And in footnotes, the Rebbe brings down that the whole chayas of Jewish people and the whole life of a Yid expresses itself in Sfarim. In other words, a Yid doesn't just learn Sfarim. He learns that's his whole life. The ganze Leben from a Jewish person, from Yidden Beklal is in the Sfarim. Just like to redeem a person in simplicity from captivity, so the same thing is to release Sfarim from their captivity. That's mamish like pidyon shvuyim kipshutai. So therefore the Rebbe says, it's exactly fitting what the Gemara says, that that's a mitzvah rabbo. It makes sense that Allah has come that will be followed by another mitzvah, maybe gorera shikaimu oid mitzvah, or befratu biika mitzvahs pidyon shvuyim, or be inyan zeh, the pidyon sfarim, that the pidyon shvuyim will go through the pidyon sfarim atzmai. And where is that? Who knows anything about that? So he says, b'yomim eila, because in these days, yeshna kavutza, there's a group of Sfarim. It's not just a group, it's a whole big Sifriyah. Yes, Shel Sfarim. Biyachadim Kisva Yad, together with manuscripts, Hamitzurofim Sfarim Elu, which are joined up and combined with these Sfarim. Shemamtinim Lepidyon Shvuyim Shalehem. They're still waiting for their Pidyon Shvuyim. They are waiting for somebody to be paid to them. And unfortunately, to this day, so some of them, they got out. Some of the main body is still in the hands of the Russians. So he says, "Mamtinim lepidyon shvuyim shelehem, sheyuchzaru." And what is their pidyon shvuyim? What are they waiting for? That they should be returned ala balabayis amiti shelehem, to their genuine owner, their real owner, who nasi doreinu kvoid kedushas moed v'chame admo. That the real owner of those Sfarim is the nasi of the Agudas Chabad, and that's the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yuchsaru. That these Sfarim have to be given back into his 4 cubits. So later on, the case was made that he's not really the owner. He's like in the one in charge, and he runs it all. But the owner is everybody of the Chassidim and the Rebbe B'Yachad. But the Rebbe is making the point that if they will go back to his 4 cubits, where he actually finds himself in the world, then in general that will imply that it's gone back to its right place. So he says, Shahin Yachid im Daladamis, that they are also his Daladamis, where he actually lives, or that's together with the Daladamis of the Beis HaKnesses, or Beis HaMedrash, or Beis Ma'asim Tovim, or Gemilas Chasodim Befrat, Beis Rabbeinu Shebabovel. Oh, that's the end of the 770. And that's what the Gemara says in Masechta Megillah, that until Moshiach comes, then the koyach of Moshiach and everything is in Beis Rabbeinu Asher Babovel. And that means that's referring to the shul in Bavel that Rav was he's one of the great Amorah. He was like the chief of it. That was his shul, and that was called Beis Rabbeinu Asher Babovel. Or that's like the center of the whole Jewish life in the Golas. So the Rebbe said that's 770, Beis Rabbeinu, I said, Babovel. And then the Rebbe said once a whole sikha about that, and he kept it for 2 weeks in his office before he gave it out. You know the whole story. Yeah, Beis Rabbeinu, Asher Babovel, the famous sikha from the Rebbe. Yeah, it's actually printed in the back of the end of the Dvar Malchus. Not here, because this is volume 1, but at the end of volume 2, they bring the whole Sikha over there. Yeah, over here, said the Rebbe's own David Amis, his own 4 cubits, is connected with the 4 cubits of the Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMedrash, which has in itself all these amazing milers. It's both where they daven and where they learn and where they do good deeds, the Gemilas Chasodim, and that's Beis Rabbeinu Asher Babovel. So that means that it's got to go back. The Sfarim that are still Shivya, they've got to be returned to there. Mitzvah goreres mitzvah, and since one mitzvah brings the other, we can understand that in our particular case. Yes, kiyum mitzvahs pidyon shvuim, b'hei Teves mevia gam kiyum mitzvahs pidyon shvuim, b'shivas asfarim, b'kisvayad ha'amurim, the ones that we've been talking about just now, also need the pidyon. And through this pidyon of Hei Sfarim, we will be zeicher to this pidyon. So I can only stress again that this is a very remarkable symbolism and very remarkable metaphorical comparison of the whole release of the Sfarim to Pidyon Shvuim. It's a very moving and very powerful comparison that these Sfarim are like captured, hidden in captivity, and they've been taken out. That's Pidyon Shvuim. It's a very powerful idea. So the Rebbe, in the footnote that I mentioned, the Rebbe also mentions this idea that the whole livelihood of Yidden is Sfarim. So to a certain extent, they are like people. The Sfarim are like people who are in captivity. So, Yesh Lohoisiv. And so now the Rebbe adds to that. And he said, Yesh Lohoisiv she'inyan ha'omo. That this particular inyan, that mitzvah, goreres mitzvah, that mitzvah achas to Pidyon Shvuim, la mitzvah shniya to Pidyon Shvuim, that will hopefully go from one mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuim to another. Mudgash yoisa kishemuda oides Pidyon Shvuim shel Sfarim. So the Rebbe said that this whole inyan has the idea that one mitzvah will bring another, and particularly in the inyan from Pidyon Shvuim, has a very special emphasis when we're talking about Pidyon Shvuim of Sfarim. Because l'chayla, wouldn't it be better if it was Bamish people, and then we would have another mitzvah of people. But he said, no, the pidyon of Sforim is a very great significance. And so, just to help you get the main point, just imagine where Yudin would be if there weren't Sforim. And we're soon going to come to the whole mitzvah. Ksiva Sefer Torah, Lamashal, that over the generations, gradually the whole Torah Shebaal Peh was at the beginning, in the early generation, was Kishmoi Kainu, it was all by word of mouth. But then Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbeinu Yehuda HaNossi, he gave permission to write it all down. And that was the union of the, when I say write it all down, he gathered together a tremendous, how do you call it, tamtzit, how do you say a tamtzit? Like an essence, like an essence. He essentialized huge numbers of Tanaic statements, and he made them into the Mishnah. And ever since then, what the Rebbe mentions in the Sikh a bit further ahead, that the first main sefer was the Mishnayos, and that happens to be correct. And then after that, there's been a ribuy Sforim have developed over the generations, and that has a connection with the original sefer, which was the Sefer Torah. There's a whole connection between them. But however, it follows that what has preserved the Jewish people, what is the whole livelihood of Yidden, is the Sefer Torah, the Torah of Moshe, which has been given down from generation to generation, and all the Sforim like an essential growth out of the main tree of the Sefer Torah. The whole livelihood of the Jewish people and their dos, their belief in Hashem, which began through our forefathers and very especially through Sinai, the revelation at Sinai, that is all embodied in the Sforim. And so the Sforim are the livelihood of the Jewish people. So therefore the Rebbe said, Sforim shal Torah, hey minyan shal Chokmah. When you first look at it, then you reach a conclusion that Sforim are inyan of Chokmah, Chokmah. What Chokmah means, Bepashtas, wisdom. That's what it means in simple sense. Ubezeh Gufa, and in that, in its own right, Chokmah Kedoshah. It's not just ordinary Chokmah, but it's holy Chokmah. Chokmah's HaTorah. Umizeh Muven, Shekol Sefer BaTorah, Nogeya Gam Lekol Shari Hasforim. From that it follows, since they all grow out of one sefer, and they all, as it were, add and develop on what was in the basic ruling in the Sefer Torah originally, and they're all connected with giving that to understand to all the generations, then it follows that all the Sforim are all interrelated. And you see it so clearly, those who are experienced in moving around in the Sforim, you see what is written briefly in one Sefer, it has a much clearer explanation in another Sefer. But Kedikaka, the Gemara says in Masechta Gittin, the Gemara says that Divrei Torah aniyim b'mokim zeh, v'ashirim b'mokim acher. That in one place they're a bit poor, they're brief, but they get a better explanation in another place. So we see that each Sefer adds to the other Sefer. And by learning the other Sefer, I get a better understanding of what I was learning before. All the Sforim are interrelated. And therefore he said, Umizeh Muven, Shekol Sefer, BaTorah Nogea Gam Lekol Shari Sforim. Each Sefer has a significance like all the other Sforim. Ki alidei halimut va'yidia b'sefer zeh nasa hui sofer b'havona v'asoga shel shara Sforim. When you learn on any given sefer, well, that adds to your whole knowledge of what you know from the others Sforim. In other words, the point being made is there's no real ever learning in any sefer, which is a holy sefer, of just repeating something that's already been said before. That all the great chidushim of all the great mechabrim in the Sforim all add something that you didn't have before. So that when you learn that particular, and you say, oh yeah, now I get a picture, and that leads you to a whole interrelation with the whole body of all the Sforim. Oh, it contains that when you release Sforim, it's like as if you're releasing the whole Torah in a way, because everything is interrelated, but derech aliyah, it's all in a way of going upwards. So therefore he says, Shekol Sefer Bater Nogia Gam Lekol Ki Alidei Alimud Ve'adi V'Sefer Nasa Hoi Sofer B'Havona V'Soga Shel Saras for it. Ukamai Kain B'Nagia Linyoneino. So the Rebbe will understand now B'Nagia to Hey Teves. He said, Hiyosha Shleimus Alimud Asforim Shelifnei Zeh. Those that Shepidyonim Nifal B'Hei Teves. If we will learn those for him, yeah, as he said, that's teluya belimud asforim animtsoim leisata b'shivya. In other words, that even though you're learning now all the sforim that were loosed in Hey Teves, but you can't really reach the perfection of your understanding of those sforim until you have all the sforim that are still in shivya. Because every sefer adds a new, how do you call it, circumference to the sefer that you're learning now. And therefore, so the Rebbe quotes that the whole perfection of all these Sforim that were released on Hey Teves is dependent on these other Sforim that are still over there in Russia. So therefore he says, Nimto, yeah, where are we? Hiyesha Shleimus to Limud Asforim Shalifnei Zeh. That they were released in Hey Teves. Tluya belimud asforim nimtzoim le'eis ata v'shivya nimtza sheshleimus hapidian desforim elo b'Hei Teves, or those sforim that were released in Hey Teves, it's their perfection. He kasher maybe lepidian shel asforim amurim. He said their perfection will only be realized when they will bring to the pidyon of these other sforim that we've been talking about. He said, "Because sharas for him, asher, mamtinim atayin lepinyoinam," and it could be in other places in the world also. There are other sforim that are not being released from their shivya. For example, it's well known by the. I don't want to mention his name, by the Atipur, I said the Pope, and their whole thing there in the Vatican, they've got things, they're still holding certain things. Eva Mela says the Rebbe is also waiting for their opinion, and they're all mutually mashpia on what you're learning now with what you do have. Wanting to be released, the ones that haven't been released yet, is affecting your ability to understand probably what you do have. And even those that have been released on Hey Teves. Yeah. It's very important, this whole klal of mitzvah, koireres mitzvah, that we should get eventually to bring out of their captivity all these others for him. Because we can't really understand perfectly until we have all this for him. So and the Rebbe said, but in this particular case, it's a very great significance because they're all part of one library. Yes, Sifriyat Agudas Chabad. It's all part of what was originally the Sifriyat of Agudas Chabad till the time of the Rebbe Rashab. Yes, Yebed Nasiyu say the Kohen Kedushas B'Heidim Chadmor Nasi Doreinu. But that's in the leadership and the Hanhola of the Frierdiker Rebbe of Amerikum Tois, that they're all part of one and the only same Sifriyah. And so therefore, they all have a kesher, one with the other. So he said, V'oid, says the Rebbe. Now we come to the main point. He said, V'oid v'gam ze'ika, v'adarabba hu ha'ika. This point is the main real point, and that is a mitzvah de pidyon shvuim b'hei Teves, mavia al derek mitzvah gereres mitzvah, according to our principle that we mentioned before. Mitzvah, one mitzvah brings another. Games a pidyon shvuim ha'amiti v'asholem alidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said there's a pidyon shvuim that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do, and we're waiting for him to do it. And what is that? That is the Geula Amitis Vashlema. In other words, that Hashem, he's got to do his pidyon shvuim. And his pidyon shvuim is all the Jewish people that are in Golas at the moment. So mitzvah, Gereres mitzvah, or the mitzvah of Hey Teves should bring with it that the Eivos should do his pidyon shvuim. You follow? Everybody's batlonim, they're all sitting looking very balabatish. Everybody's, but you realize what the Rebbe is saying, that the Eivos has got to do his pidyon shvuim. And Hey Teves can touch that off. So the Rebbe said, Alidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a pidyon shukol b'nai Yisrael, v'kol inyoni Torah, v'kol inyonim kulam, Mi agolas el agiula hamitis v'ashleima, from the golas into the emes geula. And that's the emes of pidyon shvuim. V'yesh lahoisef, the Rebbe said, and we can add further to this, shegam inyan zeh, ashaykas to pidyon shvuim lahagiula, agiula shel Moshiach, Mudgash b'miyuchad b'negel pidyon shvuim shel Sfarim, and that has a very close connection with the whole inyan of Sfarim. Yidua, as is well known. She'inyan ha'geula talui b'pidyon abiru v'azichuk, and it's written in Chassidus, in Tanya, and it's written everywhere that the geula shleima is talui in the pidyon and the bira and the zichuk and the elevation of all the netzutei kedusha shenimtzoim b'shivya b'helem, all the holy sparks that they fell from the how do you call it, the spheres kalim tatoyu. So all these sparks that fell down, and that is the Torah Arizal. That's why it was very important that we mentioned before. The Arizal, this whole teaching that the Ika Aveda in Ikvasa, the Mashiach, is the releasage of all the holy sparks of high Kedusha which fell in the Shviras HaKelim, the Toyo. So the Rebbe said, Kumtois, that there's a very delicate form of shivya, captivity, on all of these netzutes, because they're all behela behesta shelo olam, and they're covered over by the clippers. But our inyan is to get to them and literally bring them out. So the Rebbe said that only the Eivos can finish that task. It's such a difficult and complex task that ultimately speaking, we have to look to Hashem, that he will carry that out, and he will finish the whole pidyon shvuim of all the nitzutes. And that's got to do with the inyan of the Sfarim. So he says, Kedusha nimtzoim b'shivya b'elam b'esher shel olam, u'mayach shekol ha'inyonim maschilim v'nimshochim mi'atorah, and everything begins with and is nimshach, and is brought to reality through Torah. Moving Eifa, then it's clear, by the way, Shakoyach Lazeh Bar Mi'ainyan Dukmosei B'Torah. Yeah, everything, the pidyon of all the netzutes from their Helem through the Shviras HaKelim, that will begin with Torah, and Torah is the Sfarim. So the Nesina Square to finish off the whole bira of all the netzutes, that is through the infant Torah. So the releasage of the Sfarim, that is like making it possible to complete the releasage of all the netzutes. So that the Inan of Pidyon Hasfarim is connected with the Geula Shleima. So there was the removal, שהכהל הזה בא מהעניין דוגמוסי בתורה, הפדיון של עניוני תורה המצויים בשביה. If העניין from Sfarim is in Shivya, then that's the union of Torah, like it's in captivity. If we release that, then we release the koyach, which will allow us to, with Hashem's help, to elevate all the Netzot. Oh, Mela, from that we see that Hey Teves is a very key inyan in the completion of the whole, what you might call kavana, the Tachlis Abriya. And B'mela, that's final expression in the Gula Shlema. That's the ultimate Tachlis. All that is through the pidyon of the Svarim Me'ashivya. B'mela, I think we'll pause there and we'll make it a little Farbrengen now. But that's the main point that the Rebbe now builds, the whole Hemshech of the Sikha. Just like, we have to do everything possible to make sure that the Sfarim come out of their Shivya, or that will prompt and make arouse that Hashem will then carry out his pidyon. And Hashem will bring to the Indian that the Gula Mitis Bashlema, and that is assisted by the Sfarim. But ultimately, and the Rebbe said that on many occasions, that it's only an assistance, but ultimately, the one who's actually going to finally carry out the final act of the actual pidyon, that's good, is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that's the famous dogma of us all being at the parade of the soldiers, and we're all standing ready. We're all polished our buttons and everything. We're all ready, but we need the general to come. We need the real commander-in-chief to come along and carry out the inspection. So that's a Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Rebbe. You follow? Yaminu b'Hashem v'Moshe Avdoi. V'Amel Hashem shall help us a kain tiyeh lanu. And that's so. If you study further the Sikha, you'll see how the Rebbe develops on that whole. But what I've done, I've given you the main basic picture of the whole inyan. Of a Mela, it's a very rare and amazing connection that the Rebbe makes with the idea of pidyon shvui. Very, very powerful. Up till now, there wasn't a sikha like that. But calling it mamish pidyon shvui, that's a very powerful move forward.
President Vladimir Putin, he was a colonel in the KGB. A colonel in the KGB. He grew up in Leningrad amongst Jews.
Yeah, he grew up with Jews.
And he is reasonably friendly with Jews.
Yeah.
He has a close personal friend, Chief Rabbi of Russia, Beryl Lazar.
Rabbi, what's his name?
Beryl Lazar.
Yeah.
Is he able to get into Putin's Edomite head? Is the significance of these books?
Yes, you see, even he is a little bit of a shavui, that you've got these very powerful people that have control of this whole rising. And they say that if they will hold them another few years, then the prices will go up into millions. You follow? And they have persuaded him that if he doesn't let them out for the time being, then he's eventually going to make millions for the whole state of Russia. So it's a difficult sort of catch point. But you're right. What you say is correct. But as the old saying, a few bucks is unfortunately a very powerful. Very powerful thing. Very powerful stuff. And we have to be in Mizpoinan. How long? So at the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe says that you have to buy for it. that the Etzem buying the Sforim, that makes it possible for you to learn. So in another seat, in another place, the Rebbe brings from the Rosh. He was one of the big Rishonim who wrote on the Gemara, according to halachas. He paskins that nowadays, by writing all sorts of chidushei Torah, not necessarily the Sefer Torah. Nowadays, you are making the mitzvah of Kesiva Sefer Torah. And so the Rebbe broadens that. The Rebbe says you can't, if you buy Sforim, which will make it possible for you to do that, you're also, as it were, keeping the mitzvah of Kesiva Sefer Torah. Very powerful idea. So when you go into a bookshop, you buy a sefer, you're like adding to your kiyum mitzvah of Kesiva Sefer Torah. Yes. No.
Chaim.
Let's make a broth.
So I have a question. To redeem the land, the Shavuot, the land, Eretz HaKodesh, this is also a mitzvah.
Yeah, yeah. The Rebbe would agree with that. Yeah. The Rebbe would agree with that.
A bigger mitzvah.
Because the Rebbe said the Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Yid. So they are redeeming the land by taking it. But they must be very careful not to give it back.
Never.
That's what the Rebbe said. But ain't no connection. It has a certain connection. Yeah. Good for you. That's why I'm bad.
May we redeem land.
Yeah. No? Very nice. That's already young. That's quite a pre-age, you know that, Mordcha. That's quite a pre-age. It's made out of karuz.
One of his daughters.
Just remember, guys, that that's quite a pre-age.
Yeah. Chaim Ansha. Amen.
Very nice.
Under the hedge.
Yeah, I know.
Why does do that? Let me see.
Have you seen Oh yeah, mama, 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 di da na sa, di na na la, di da na sa, di na la, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, hey, ya na na na, ya na, hey, ya na 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 na, di da na sa, hey, ya na na na, di da na sa, hey, ya na na na, ya na na na, ya na. Wake up,
So, if we talk in a more general, what we might call homely fashion, then we can say that the whole inyan of Hey Teves is the netzochen of the Oyer over the Choshech. It's the inyan of his Gabras Oyer al HaChoshech. And like it's brought in Tanya, the altar brings that Oyer is Deiche Choshech, but Derek Mamela, if you show Emesa Oyer, then you automatically drive away the Choshech. You automatically dismiss the Choshech. And so that's with a small amount of Oyer, it's possible to achieve that. How much more so with a amount of Oyer? And that's what the Rebbe says, Allah has come of a kama. When we're talking about Indian of Pidyon Shuim, what the Gemara calls that means for Rabba, then how much more so that will drive away the Choshech.
Amen.
The Indian of the Sforim not being in their right place and not being able to carry out their right tafkid, well, that's the Indian of Nea Mitzvah, the Torah Oyer, or that's Choshech, that's the opposite of the whole Indian of the Sforim. What their Indian is Oyer, and to throw light into the world. Of Amela, the Indian of Didon Notzach, the Indian of Didon Notzach is first of all referring, as the Rebbe brought out in what we learned this evening, it's referring to a Gudas Chassidei Chabad and to the whole body of all the Chassidim, and the leader, which is the Admor, what he's the one in charge of the whole, and under his Hanhola, the whole Indian of the Sforim. Of Amela, it follows that the word Didon, Notzach, that this is our victory, refers to two inyanim. First of all, to the Rebbe, what he's the one that all the Sforim are in his control. And the second thing is the Sforim themselves, the Etzem Inyan of the Sforim, it's their, how do you call it, victory. They have had their emes opinion and their emes, how do you call it, redemption from the state of the haper of what a sefer is all about. But that's in and they've had the captivity in the end of Koisha, which is haper in us for him, and they have been revealed. And Mamela did or not is referring to the Sforim also. Because the Sforim, they are, like the Rebbe pointed out, they are like the in of the whole Torah Kula, because every Sefer adds to the significance of the other Sforim, but that all goes back, but there are Christoshelus, to the original Sefer, which is the Sefer Torah. And that everything is like a huge intertwining body of one thing influencing the other. And so just like the Geula Shlema means the elevation of all the Netzutzes, so in the same way we need all the Sforim to be where they really belong. And the Inyan of Der Hashpah is only when they are in their right place. Because if they're in the hands of those who are only interested in money, Rahman and are only interested in business deals with something very precious, then that's the Inyan of Klippa V'Sitra Achra, but that's Monaya, how do you call it? That prevents the light of the Sforim shining forth. And therefore, that's the Inyan of Choisha. And Isabcha, Chashoicha Lin Hoira, is Dabki when the Sforim get back to their right place. And that's what we see, that there's a Gevaldik Nafkamina. And that's what's mentioned in the Pasuk Ashavua. That's a Gevaldik Nafkamina, where you learn Torah. If you learn Torah in a Mokim Kodesh, then you understand Torah completely different, and you are able to give that over, and you become like a center of ashpah to others. And that's the whole Inyan of a yeshiva. What a yeshiva is a place which is a holy atmosphere made specially only to devote yourself entirely to the Inyan of studying Torah Hashem. Not studying concepts or reading some nice book, but studying the Etzer Minim and Torah Hashem. And then you see it as an effect, and that's what we saw over the years in the Yeshiva and Kfar Chabad. And you see it everywhere where people actually go into a Yeshiva and they learn. You see that it has an effect. In a few weeks' time, they look different. And not only they look different, because they are different. The Torah is having a different effect on them, and they're, how do you call it, having a different effect on those around them. And therefore, even their families, and that some of them will say to you at the beginning, there's no way my family would ever accept anything. And in the end, you see the father come to a visit, and he's putting on tefillin or he's wearing a kippah the whole time, or who knows what. Because the way you learn and what is the actual situation in which you learn Torah, well, that has a very powerful effect. And that's the Inyan of the fact that the Sforim have to be in base Rabbeinu, Asher Babovel, or then they have their mitzvah of a Torah, then the light goes off. Or if they're under the hands of people that got them only for money, then they will look in them, but it won't have any light. On the contrary, it will work opposite the Inyan of light. And therefore we find that the Gemara says in the Sekta Yuma, the Gemara says that for all the time, ever since Avraham Avinu, yeshivas have never stopped from the Jewish people. Le'olam loy posko yeshiva mi aviseinu, avis aviseinu, ada yom hazeh. There's never been a time when there haven't been yeshiva Avinu. He had Messias Neves 14 years on his way out to to Haran to set up the Jewish people, he first of all locked himself away. He concealed himself inside a yeshiva. And Rashi brings down that he didn't lay down shlovim during that time. And he didn't, have any of the normal frills and folderols of this world. He didn't have all the luxuries. He spent his whole time standing, so probably he leant on a stender maybe, but that's about 14 years. And when he came to lay down, when he saw the sulam, he saw the chalom sulam, Rashi says the most amazing thing. Rashi said that was the first time he laid down in 14 years.
Wow.
So the thing is, we learn that and we just sort of pass it over. But it's very important that what we were just learning, that the Sporim have to be where they belong. And if they are where they belong, then kinei mitzvah v'torah oyer, then the mitzvahs light up the Torah, and it goes and spreads both to the person himself and to all over. But that's talui in a certain inyan which is called Mesiras Nefesh. And that's why we find, if you look at it, take the whole inyan of Chanukah. What Chanukah basically is that message. The real Torah oyer has to light up even the Rishus HaRabim. But the question is, how does that work? How is it that the nair, which you light, could be even inside your house, is actually lighting up with all the clippers and being mabatal them in the Rishus HaRabim? How does that work? We see before Chanukah, there's Yud Tes Kislev. And then after Chanukah, there's Hay Teves. So we see that we have Chanukah in the middle, and we have two very Siddish, Yomim Tovim, one prior to and one liachrei, Chanukah. So we can suggest it's well known that Yud Tes Kislev is the Yontiv of Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, the Alter Rebbe, he could have not gone. It's well known, the famous story of Bezeh. He could have not gone. What did he go for? He wanted to be soilol esadera, and he got to begin making the way and preparing the road for Kiyum Mesiras Nefesh. He knew that later, after him, the whole Kiyum of Pnimis HaTorah is only going to be if you're prepared to quit and have Mesiras Nefesh. And the famous statement the Gemara Masechet Menachos is that when does Azayis give off its shemen? Only when you quetch it. You have to quetch. In the old days, they used to quetch them in a base abat, it was called. They had these two big stones. One came down on top of the other, or a lever, and it quetched the zaysim. And that's how they gave out their shemen. Azayis kishakoichi, say nice and shanai. That's what the Alter Rebbe wanted to show. That it's only through Mesiras Nefesh, just, how do you call it, learning Siddur with a cup of coffee and a cream cake or something. That's not the way to, how do you call it, make Siddur really shine, both in your own life and in the lives of others. You got to be prepared to kretzer habissel. You got to be prepared to have Mesiras Nefesh. I feel in your own private life, with Meretok in Yonei HaKlal. And so that's the precedence. And therefore, the Rebbe once brought down, they used to say in Lubavitch that Yud Tes Kislev is the bris of a chassid. Yud Kislev is the birthday of the bris, even though it's one day further. But the bris is Yud Tes Kislev. And what is a bris? Avram Avinu, when he made the first bris, he was 99 years old. He was very elderly gentleman. And nonetheless, he made the Yiddah from Bris Milah. What is this Yiddah from Mesiras Nefesh? And in every generation, when a person has a son and he's going to have a son, he takes him into the base of medicine or into a house with a moil and he cuts him. He cuts him very seriously and spills his blood. But that's a infant. The Gemara says it's a infant a korban. It's like you bring the child as a korban right from the very beginning. But that, in Panimis Aina, that's indicatory of Mesiras Nefesh, of being ready to overlook all the comforts in order to make the Torah oil, make it shine. So that's at the beginning. In other words, that the Rebbe Rashab said that the whole inyan of Yofutu, Maya Nasecho, Chutza, began with the Alter Rebbe's imprisonment in Petersburg. That when the Alter Rebbe came out, that already made possible for getting out to the Chutz in a much more distant and powerful Oiven. And why was that? Because he brought with him the infant bris milah, the infant Mesiras Nefesh. You offer yourself up as a korban, Hashem, and that's the way it goes the whole way down the line. And so with that we can understand why it is, it's a famous shaila in the Parshas HaShavua. Why did Yaakov, he wanted to set up a yeshiva. But once again, we see, even before he came, Yaakov Avinu sent Yehuda, but according to one pshat in Rashi, he sent him Lahoirois Lafonov Goishna. That's at the beginning of tomorrow's Chittas, I think. Yeah. And it's written Lahoirois Lafonov Goishna. So Rashi says two pirush. The first pirush is to look for a place where to live and to fix it up for him. The second pshat, Rashi says that he wanted to make a yeshiva. He wanted to make a base Talmud that Mishom Teita Hoirah. In other words, it would be a Chabadska yeshiva. You follow? It would not only learn, but it would give out Hoirah to everybody. It would give out light and instruction and chayas to all this weaver around it. That's the deal. So for that, had he called Yaakov, had to send Yehuda. He's got Yosef there. And Yosef is the second in charge of the whole country. And Mamish, he's the ruler of the whole country. But he couldn't make a yeshiva for them. It's no problem. Yaakov could have sent an email to Yosef, and he could have said, listen, Yosef, please prepare me up as stick on yeshiva. And Yosef would know. He would know what that means. Because he was learning with Yaakov when they parted. The Rashi, when he brings the whole thing. So they were learning when they parted. So Yosef would have been a very willing assistant. And nonetheless, we see that Yaakov sent up Yehuda to make the yeshiva. And so what's the inyan of Yehuda? He's the inyan from Malchus. Derech Hagav, that's the inyan from Moshiach ben David, by the way. And Yosef is Moshiach ben Yosef. Anyway, the inyan of Yehuda is Poel Mamish, inyonim of pashtas, but getting things done, not being up in high oilmas and in high world. What Yosef was also like that, the truth is. But Yosef was mitzvah under. He used the inyan from the Yesod. Well, that's a different type of approach. But Yehuda is Mesiras Nefesh, but Poel Mamish, to get things done in a way that the light will go out, in a way that will affect other people as well. It won't be just a very effective yeshiva with its own chidushim, but it'll be a yeshiva that the chidushim affect all the people around. And therefore, Yaakov had to send Yehuda. Well, it had to be Ish Yehuda Sholach Lafono, Lohedes Lafono, Goishna. It had to be pashtas, Mesiras Nefesh, Bapoyo. And that's like the connection with Moitz Chanukah and Hey Teves is every year about Parsha Vayigash. Yeah, Parsha Vayigash or Parsha Miketz, or even going into Parsha Vayichi. It's all in and around those inyanim. And therefore we see that in an earlier part, when the Shvatim came back from meeting, being revealed to Yosef, or Yosef being revealed to them, they told him at the beginning, Yaakov Avinu couldn't be Makabla, but it's written that he saw the Agalah, but that reminded him of the Torah that he'd been learning with Yosef. And then it's written about Chi Ruach Yaakov Avinu, that Yaakov Avinu's spirit relived. How do you call it? So the first, Hey Teves, when the Rebbe came down to Mincha after everybody heard the news, the Rebbe said a sikha, and he said a sikha on that Indian, but Chi Ruach Yaakov Avinu. And everybody understood that the Rebbe was also referring to himself, not just to Yaakov Avinu, but Emerson Nasi is a nitzot shel Yaakov Avinu. Rashi said, what is Techi Ruach Yaakov Avinu? That the Ruach HaKodesh, which all the years Yaakov Avinu used to have, for 22 years after he parted from Yosef, he didn't have it. But when he heard this and he believed them, and he looked at the Agoras and he understood the Divrei Torah he'd been learning with Yosef, and then he realized that it was Emes. Then the Ruach HaKodesh came back to him. You follow? And that's the Indian for Emes HaChayis. So you might say, well, good, what's Ruach HaKodesh got to do with us? So the Emes is Ein Hanami. What's it got to do? But it does have to do, because the expression Ruach HaKodesh, in its full pshat, refers to somebody who has divine insight. You know, he has almost koreg lenavuah. Of a ruach hakodesh, b'pashtus, if you tight it, it means a holy ruach. You know, of a mila, that means a ruach shel kedusha that rests within every person. That if he has the Torah in the right. In other words, he doesn't just sit at home. He goes to a Shiur. You know, he goes out of the house and he sits without a yidden in a Shiur. And it's brought down that that's like sitting in a base of medrash. It's like being in a yeshiva. That gives a whole different angle and a whole different kedusha. And that becomes Torah Oira. And so then the Mensch goes home and he gives that over to his Bnei Bayis. That's a catching thing to use the expression. It's nidbak. It catches on to the people in the family because he's got a ruach, Techi Ruach Yaakov Avinu. He's living with a whole new koyach, and that's the Indian Hey Teves. The Rebbe said that the return of the Sfarim, that gives the koyach of Techi Ruach Yaakov, that can live up the spirit of kedusha, Ruach HaKodesh, B'kol echad v'echad v'Yisrael. And so for that, the Sfarim have to be in the right place. So Ein Hanami, you can learn Sfarim anywhere, but it's very important that Be'ez's man and Asmanim, you learn in a yeshiva or a chaponim ador, and that's the Indian, what Le'elam Lei Posko, yeshiva me'avi seidu. They never stopped having a yeshiva. Even before Matan Torah, Yeshem v'Eber got together and they had a huge ma'aseh for talking about all that they could talk about, all that they had gathered, all the knowledge and appreciation of Hashem that they could have without Matan Torah. They gave that over. Das is Ruach HaKodesh. Das is the Pshat Ruach HaKodesh. Of Amela, they were able to give that over and was that light up. And therefore, it's brought down, and the Rebbe brings it in Sichas Beneger to the Hemshah of Hey Teves, that in Pasha V'Yechi, it's written that Yaakov Avinu lived 17 years in Mitzrayim, and 17 is B'Gematria Toiv. There's one over the Tzedek heard from his Malamed. And so that means that the best of yours, or the best years, Yaakov Avinu had in Mitzrayim. So Tzemach came out from the Cheder, and he wanted to talk with his Zayda. He spoke to the Alter Rebbe, and he said, the Malamed told us that the best years of Yaakov Avinu was in Mitzrayim. He said, Mitzrayim is a mocking tumor, you know. How come that Yaakov had the best? No, since they already had a yeshiva, and they already had Yehuda and made the yeshiva, and they were already learning Torah in the atmosphere of the yeshiva, and the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of holiness, Metallikut Tzemach. Therefore, that the Alter Rebbe answered that if you have Torah and you learn Torah, that's the best of your. Doesn't matter where you are. But that makes it the best years. You follow? But that's what after Chanukah, what you've been throwing out light into the Rishus Harabim. But in order that should mamish be a dovish or kayom, and it should be nimshach or kol hashana, you have to have Teves, the Mesiras Nefesh of Teves after Chanukah. The Mesiras Nefesh of Yutes Yisrael that made Chanukah able to give off its full life. Even Teves makes it possible to bring it down, mamish, and preserve it, al kol hashana. Not to put away the Chanukah menorah and say, oh, next year again. You know, this is it. The whole idea of Teves brings the shemen and the light of the shemen into everyday life. Al kol hashana kula. And that's what we learned tonight. That's the inyan. The emes kiyum of the whole Jewish people, and the whole Torah is dependent on every sefer, because every sefer links into the other sefer. And that's the shleimus of the Torah. And that makes it possible to bring the best to your, no matter where you are. But you didn't say that we don't want that anymore. That happens to be true. But we don't want to be in Mitzrayim anymore. And the Rebbe backs that very strongly. And he says, you have to shrei, we want Moshiach now. But we have to have Dinif and the Gula Shleima. Of the Einoch Hanami, that in the last moments, prior to the Gula Shleima, you can have the best of Chayis and the best of Lippen and the best of Yoram with Yahweh Zachen. It's a Dinif and Torah, and the Frat Penimus of Torah. Of Amir L'chaim Yidden. And those are the messages, you follow? Those are the ganze message. Aber Teves is a hemsher of Chanukah. It's a hemsher of the Shemen Torah.
Chaim or Tamimim.
You see, Oil Tamimim is the same meaning.
Yeah.
But the Rebbe said to me that will be the shleimus.
Chaim.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Chaim.
Ufaratsta, Yama. Hey, Faratsta, Yama. Hey, oh, Faratsta, Yama. Oh, Faratsta, Yama. Oh, for us, Yama, oh, for us, Yama Bakema Safana, Yama Bakema Safana, hey, oh, for us, Yama Bakema. Oh, for us, Safana, Yama Vakema Sofana Negva Yama Vakema Vanavaneka.
Good. So I just want to add a point in the light of what we spoke about and bring it down a little bit to the more the point. And that is that we see that Vayiga Shalav Yehuda had to come to Yosef at that particular point. Because Yosef, Biyodi Hoyo, Likoya, he had the ability to. So Yiga Shalav Yehuda, of it's brought down and said that after Yehuda got to Yosef, and he was misbattled as it were to Yosef, that woke up the Shiur Shamiti of Yehuda. And then on the contrary, Yosef goes to Yehuda. Yeah, and therefore it makes sense what the Zohar HaKodesh writes, that the union of Yehuda and Yosef, Alidei Vayigash, or that Tzmichas Geula Letfila. And Yosef is the infant Geula, he's the infant Yesod, and that's the infant Goyel. And Yehuda, he's the infant of Tefillah, Tefillah Malchus, the infant Tefillah. So everybody asked the kasha, but on the contrary, Yosef went to the Geula, Yehuda went to the Geula, not the Geula, the Tefillah came, the Tefillah came to the Geula, not that the Geula came to the Tefillah. It's not Smichas Geula, Tefillah, but it's Smichas Tefillah, Geula. Yehuda is approaching Yosef. So therefore, the answer is, like we just said, once Yehuda gets to Yosef, and he unites with him, and he gets the Messiah's koach from Yosef, then his pneumistic shoyresh is revealed. The koach atzmi v'pnimi shel malchus is revealed. Then Yosef says, oh, yeah, that's being revealed. Even he becomes bottled, and so he is Tzemach to Yehuda. It's like sort of works into the pincer movements. Yeah. It's really Smichas Geula Yosef to Yehuda, even though B'Poel it doesn't look that way. That's what's written in Chassidus, and even brought down in Torah from the Alter Rebbe. The Rabbi Rashab writes about a Barichas in Hemshech Samachol. Of Amela come along certain people, and they say that that's what the Gemara brings of Masechta Kedushin, right near the end of the first parak, that there's a difference of opinion, which is greater, is deed, Maisa, is that greater, or is Talmud greater, learning? Yeah. In other words, that the one opinion holds that deed is greater, and the other one holds that learning is greater, so Talmud is greater. So the Indian is that Yehuda, he represents Maisa. He represents the Indian of Pashtus, Malchus, the Indian of Maisa. Yosef, he's the high spiritual Baal Hamadrega, he represents Limud, the Indian of Talmud. So the Gemara says that they took a vote, that all the Chachamim sat down, and they took a vote, and they said that really, Talmud is greater. Why? Because Talmud brings you to Maisa. Talmud brings you anyway to Maisa, but it's a sign that Talmud is greater. So comes along the Alter Rebbe, another great Meforshim, and they say, wait a minute, but that would tend to imply that really Maisa is greater. Because you say, why is Talmud greater? Because it brings to Maisa. But for that, it's much that the whole greatness of the Talmud is that it brings anyway to the Maisa. But from that, it would appear that the Maisa is greater. So the answer, one of the answers that's given to that is the Chabad Torah v'negeh to the Geula Shleima, and that is that Ein Noch Hanami. Now prior to the Geula, Yosef is still like a, and he's even learning and all that. Ein Hanam, you have to bring to Maisa, but that's not yet Galui Ad Kedikah. When Moshiach comes, then the Ikka is going to be the Bali Maisa. It's brought down Yom Yom in reference to, pretty much in reference to Hey Teves, the Sorah Hey Teves. It's brought down in our Yom Yom that Moshiach is going to be very happy with the simple Bali Maisa, the people get things done. And that's going to be the Ikka of Eino Hanami. Koloid that Moshiach hasn't come, Yosef has got a Maila and Godel Talmud, Shemevi, Lidei Maisa. It's got the ability that gives into Yehuda and brings to mind. When then Yehuda's going to be greater. Yehuda, he's going to be like the famous Kasha, that would appear that Maisa is the greatest. Ain't when Moshiach will come, he will reveal that. You follow? Then Yehuda's going to be greatest. So that's the Smichas, Geula, Litfila. Ain't right now. Yeah, it's the other way around. It's Smichas, Atfila Ela Geula. Of a take of Meir, it's going to be Smichas. Geula to the infant Tefillah. From that we see that hidden in everything that happens is really the greatness of Pashtas and Adikot. The Far. I wanted to say a couple of words about the whole Inyan, that we have to be mischazik at this particular time in our Amunah. We have to, it's brought down from the Baal Shem Tov, it's put in the Sefer, Teves Yaakov Yosef, but he was a Talmud Muvak from the Baal Shem Tov. And he writes that he heard from the Baal Shem Tov that the Ika Hachona to be a Mashiach, and the Ika Inyan, which is going to be Mitkaleh Alidei Moshiach, is the infant Amunah Tohira Upashuta, that you have to have a lot of very good Amunah. And therefore, the Rambam, in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, if you look, the Yud Gimel Ikrim are all principles of Amunah. They're principles what you have to believe. And then for the first one, you have to believe in the Matthias and the Boiling. That's the first one. And then the Ika Hayud Beis is about Moshiach. And he says, yeah, Tzodik Lahamin. That's what's about. You have to believe that the Moshiach is going to come. He's going to redeem all the Yidden. It's going to be the Gula Shlema. Or that's Shel Emunah. But at this time, when there's so many Bilbulim and so many, Dvarim, Bilti, Movanim, Klau are occurring, we have to be very strong in our Emunah. There's a Maisa that happened with the Baal Shem Tov. Once he came, it was in the days when the Shelig was already melting in Russia. It was close to Nisan. And so when the Shelig begins to melt over there, all the rivers become huge torrents because all the water runs from all the Shelig into the rivers. So the Baal Shem Tov came to this river that he had to go over in order to reach his destination. And here's this tremendous torrent, And so there was a little guy that he had some little boats that he used to take people, well, that was his panosa. He used to take people over the river in these boats. So Baal Shem Tov said he wants to travel he wants to go over the river. So the guy said, excuse me, Rabbi, are you normal? He said, he said, I can't go over this in a boat. We'll just be swept away. We'll end up, drowning in some waterfall somewhere. So he said, I'm terribly sorry, but you have to come back in another couple of weeks, and then I'll be happy to take you over. So the Baal Shem Tov said, well, he's very sorry, but he's got to travel. He's got to move ahead. So the Baal Shem Tov took off his girdle. He had a girdle on. He took off his girdle and he put it on the water, on the surface of the river. It would have been swept away, but he sort of held it. And then he got up and stood on the girdle and he walked across the water. And when he got to the end of the Gafne, he threw it further, and then he walked across the whole river to the other bank. So this became well known. So a big road, it was a big makubal. He came running to the Baal Shem Tov, and he said, I would like you to tell me what tziruf of the holy names did you have in mind in order to do that? I'd like to be able to do a similar thing. He said, what was the shemas that you had in mind? So the Baal Shem Tov said, believe me, I didn't have in mind any shemas. He said, I was just mischazik in my emunah. And he said, I went over that water with emunah pshuta. He said, that's all. No shemas, no nothing. He said, I went over the water with emunah pshuta. Yeah, that's the story. From that we see that the Baal Shem Tov is another move. It's another gear altogether. The koiches ha'atzmiyim of a yida emunah. So what you got to do is strengthen your emunah. You got to be very strong that this is really going to happen and believe. And that's what the Rambam says. Ani mami pe'emunah shleima. Yeah, and the Rebbe used to sing that. I was there when the Rebbe sang that. Ani mami pe'emunah shleima. Could the Ike Biro right at the end of the whole thing? It's going to be the Biro of holding stark with your emunah and not falling in chas v'shalom and any sveikas and bilbulim. And therefore, I just want to add another point. I notice everybody's getting very tired and nobody has patience anymore. But I just want to mention a very important thing. And that is that we have to be very, very careful what we say. And I want to suggest to you that what it's called this terrible uprising of the anti-Semitism in America, particularly from the Tsfat, what they've never had to Yidden, for generations. They've always been pretty good with the Yidden, on the whole. In Crown High, for example, there was never anything, for decades, there was never anything bad. Only if somebody came from outside. If you came from outside, then they're the ones that made the trouble. Why? Because there was a good relationship. I once had a mazel by the river. I was in the washing machine there, and my trousers got all torn completely. And I didn't have all sorts of trousers all around the place in those days. So I wanted to fix them, So somebody said to me, there's a Schwarzer guy on the corner of Empire and Platt or something. And the Goylem is that in this house there, on the ground floor, there's a Schwarzer fellow that he does good tikkunim, he fixes tailoring. So I walk in, and he greeted me very, very beautiful. Poor fellow, he lived on a little weeny sort of a place that his sewing machine was alongside his bed. He didn't have any room where to put the sewing machine in his little weeny bedroom. And they lived very, frugally, tremendously so. But he greeted me very nicely, and he said, "Oh yes, Rabbi, of course I do this sort of thing, and I'll be happy to do it for you, Mary. You should come back in X hours, and I hope I'll have it ready." So I come back in X hour, maybe a bit later, but I come back and he had it ready, and he had also made another ticket that I didn't ask him to make. He'd done something to strengthen the waistline of the trousers. He said, I realized that where you guys are praying with the big rabbi, he said, you have a lot of pushing there. So he said, I've strengthened your trousers for you. So I said, well, that's very decent of you, man. And he said, I'm not charging for that. I'm only charging for what you brought me. And so I had a very good time with him. I got on very well with him. There was no sin or anything like that at all. He was very, very nice to me, even though he lived terribly frugally. And that's how it was. Now, why is there all of a sudden? I want to suggest to you something. Maybe this shouldn't be put too much in. Unfortunately.
What's the sound?
Unfortunately, we have over here a whole group of these absolute irresponsible fools that they are attacking Yiddishkeit and they're attacking the Fromme Yidden day and night. And they're all the time besmirching Yiddishkeit and Yidden and Fromme Yidden. And they are saying openly, b'fnei kol ha'am v'eda, terrible things about on the political front. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to go into the trouble of telling you. But it could be you know anyway. If you don't, then it doesn't matter. But that's what's happening. And not only this guy that he's the leading one, he's got others who come in on the ball game, and they also say the most terrible things. And so that indirectly works into the air of Olam Hazeh, and that goes into the minds of the Goyim, and they get the vibes, because Yidden have power. A speech on the part of a Yid has power to go out. The fact that Yidden are besmirching their own religion, Rahman Islam, and besmirching their own people, and they're besmirching those who've held them and made it possible for them to be alive today. It's only the Yidden that have kept Hashem's Torah all the generations, including the Shoya, and have lived through the Shoya, and have kept the whole Torah mitzvahs alive. Well, that's why he's alive today. And he attacks his own Matziyah. And so that goes over, and that affects the Goyim, you follow? So they pick up a vibe without themselves knowing that the Yidden anyway hate their own selves, and they hate their own religion. Let's get moving, you know. And it's terrible. And therefore, we have to be very careful what we say. You must only think good about another Yid, and you must only talk about the praises of Yid, not say anything, even about him. You shouldn't talk about him, but you should know and pray that he shut up. We're not worried about him. All we want him is to go home and shut up. Plus, all these cronies and all the other people that they're in on the same game, and they have to just go home and shut up. You follow? That's having a terrible effect on the avia of the relationship of Yidden to their own Matziyah. We have to be very careful, and we have to be always speaking, and therefore you should realize the Friedrich Rebbe, he said that if you are oiver and aveira bedakis, but even in delicacy, some aveira, but you did it deliberately, then that causes in the other side of the world somewhere that somebody chas v'sholem shmatzak. You know what shmatzak means? He turns into a Christian. Rahman Islam. Yeah. That's what the Friedrich Rebbe said. If you do something against the Kedusha, but you do it deliberately, well, that causes on the other side of the world another Yid, a Shmatza. So, I mean, that's very frightening. We see that everybody is all in the same pattern. With Yidden, we're all in the same boat. You can't avoid it, that you are responsible for other Yidden. Since you're responsible, use your seichel and be a man, and realize that what are you doing here today? I can tell you a little story, but everybody says he just carries on. There's no end to it. But I told Benshi the story, Benshi Weissler, that once when I was in the army and I was out in the field, and I wouldn't eat the food that they bought because the food is basically kosher in the army. But when they bring it into the field, it's a balagan, the milk is not placing, and everything just becomes a terrible balagan. So I didn't, and I had another guy with me. He was he wasn't a Chabadnik, but I had a bit of a word with him, and he backed me, and also he didn't. It was very difficult to be in a state of activity, very important activity, and not to be able to eat properly. But that's what we took on ourselves. So one day we're sitting, they bought all the food, most of all these guys died on home, and it became comes a terrible balagan, and we're sitting over the side, under a tree, and we're eating a bit of bread with some. By the way, the bread is kosher in the army. With the bread, and that's because of Rabbi Yankov Lander, the old Rabbi Lander. He was the one who fixed that up. That the bread, to this day in the army, is kosher. So we were eating a bit of bread and tomatoes. That's what we get. It was okay. We're eating some tomatoes. So we're sitting there, we're munching away at a very frugal little meal. All of a sudden, a big, important officer comes up to where we were. And he'd come out to see how the whole exercise was going. So he's, nosing around to see what's happening. And he was a big officer. I can't remember if he was a Sgan Aluf or he was a Rav Seren or something like that. But he was a big knob. So here we are sitting, he comes over to us and he sort of looks at us and he studies us carefully. And then he says to us in Hebrew, he said, "Why are you making life difficult? Why do you make your life so difficult?" He said, "We're just eating a piece of tomato. It's going to be very hard to do all that we demand of you guys." So he said, "Why don't you, when you come to the army, just, take office from all the laws and everything, and just eat whatever it is. When you get out of the army, you'll go back and do what you want. But when you're here, make life easy. Why do you have to make life hard?" That's what he says to us. So I thought to myself, I've got to answer this guy. I've got to say something good to him. So I said, "Listen here, I'm a fakir." I said to him, "What are you doing here, by the way? What are you doing here?" So I didn't mean to be cheeky. I wasn't saying, "What are you, drinking a cup?" I said, So he said, "Oh, yes." He said, "I serve in the army, and this is my part of my job. So I'm doing my job. I'm here. Ala tafkid, I'm nipa tafkid." So I said, "Very good, but where did the tafkid come from? And where did all the people who made the tafkid, where did they come from?" I said, "How come they're all here?" So he said, "Oh, I'm a Yehudi, I'm not me way back, He said, Islando had his ancestry." So I said, "Oh, very interesting." So I said, "How did the ancestors, how did they hold out?" I said, "Because they were very, very particular. They wouldn't eat everywhere, and they wouldn't eat unless they knew it was kosher al-pi Torah. And that's why they're here today, because they were meshuggah, and they wouldn't eat everything. And that's why they're here today." So he was an intelligent man. He was very intelligent, and he was decent. He wasn't nasty. And so he sort of, he considered what I said, and for a few minutes, and he said, "Yesh mashu b'mesha tov." He said, "There's something to what you say." And then he just sort of sat for another minute, then he got up and he said, "Tov chevra, toklu labriut." He said, eat gesundheit, whatever you eat gesundheit, and he walked off. But I wasn't interested in beating him. I didn't want to out-argue him. I just made him realize that it's only the fact that Yidden have been good, and I spitz not only if it's kosher or it's not kosher. Oh, that's what's preserved the Jewish people all these years. So you got all these fools, and what are they doing here, McLeod? Only because their forefathers were Haredim. And a Hared means somebody is concerned about Ratzon Hashem. And that's the whole story. And that's Hey Teves. We've got to worry about what the Sforim tell us, not what we'd like to do. Like the Rebbe said, the Sforim all add, and they all back up one the other. And they all mashlim. One the other. And that leads at the Kodesh Baruch he will do his pidyon shvuim. And only he can finish off the whole job. As the days go further, we see it's getting more and more confused. Only he can sort it out. You understand? Hashem has to make the final pidyon shvuim. And Beis Hashem, take of me out. But we must be very, very careful to listen only to what the Rebbe says, only the Rebbe's words, and only his inyanim. And when you talk about another Yid like the Rebbe, the Rebbe never said a negative thing about other Yid. Not even by a Farbrengen or not by the dollars or anywhere. The Rebbe only said positive things, only good things, and constructive. That's the way we have to talk. Abamela, that will give out the right vibes into the air. Abamela, that will help, and that will help to drive away all these clippers, which don't make any sense. Because these Schwarzes are being stirred on by somebody. I don't know, but you should realize there's a lot of terrible Arabs in the United States. Right outside the Crown Heights, outside Empire Boulevard, on the other side, there's a huge Mizgat, huge. Yeah, and they're hanging around all over the place. So they're getting into these Schwarzes. They're simple people. But the Schwarzer Mitzvah, he doesn't have any reason to hate the Yidden. On the contrary, he's a Miyut and so a Yidden. Yeah? And he's a Eved, he was a slave. So he should love the people that were slaves once upon a time. Why is he doing this? Because over here, wrong vibes are going into the air. You mustn't talk about your own people. You mustn't do it. One in the club. Particularly that those people represent the court would put you there. You're not there, it's not them. It has to be the simple, but to level. It has to be the infant Shem and Torah, Chanukah is the infant Zochos, the infant Simcha, it's the infant. Lahoya always makes Freila. When you light something up, you make it positive and Freila. And it has to be the way Bapoil, Mamish, praise Hashem, Simchas Oilom, praise Hashem. And only with the Rebbe's going to save us all and take us all into the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Take you from here, Mamish. And the Rambam says, you have to believe in that. And Imam in Pevun Shleim. I'm saying in the morning. And that's the Teves Baal Shem Tov. And that's where the whole Chassidus began. It all began in Amunah. And therefore the Tanya begins with the word Tanya, which is Eison. And Eison has to do with Amunah. Even though Tanya is a very seichel, the Geseifer of it's based on Amunah. And its aim is to bring you to Amunah. Yeah. Good, everybody's listening. A good Hemshah, to a good Yonta, praise Hashem. And take his miyad, we're all with Unzera Helike, Melech HaMashiach, we're all with him together in the great and the Munah Dikeh Geula.
Amen. Amen.
Good.
Daniel Hassan said